Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a truly fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying reality about how the human brain actually works. We're going to look at how the exact same memory errors that put innocent people in jail are actively sabotaging your study habits. We usually think of studying as just downloading data into a hard drive, but today we're using the science of forensic psychology to show you why that's completely wrong and how understanding these hidden cognitive traps behind studying can make you a vastly better learner.
Picture a pretty chilling scene, a courtroom on a Tuesday morning. It's October 14th, exactly 9:15 a.m. You're watching an innocent man get sentenced to life in prison. And his life is ruined simply because an eyewitness sat on the stand, pointed a finger right at him, and swore they remembered his face perfectly. This devastating reality forms the emotional core of the research we're looking at today. It completely strips away those comforting illusions we hold about the permanence and accuracy of our own personal histories. It shows us, point blank, that a confident memory does not automatically equal a true memory.
So think about it. If you or someone you love witnessed an intense crime tomorrow, how confident would you actually feel picking the suspect out of a police lineup? Most of us would like to think we'd be rock solid, right? We'd say, hey, I saw what I saw. But knowing how easily our minds play tricks on us, as cognitive science has proven time and time again, that confidence, it's often entirely misplaced.
To understand exactly why, we have to shatter a massive myth. We really like to think our brains are these passive recorders, capturing perfect, high-definition digital footage of our lives that we can just rewind and play back whenever we want. But the reality? Memory is an adaptive, reconstructive puzzle. Every single time you recall an event, your brain is actively rewriting and reconstructing that narrative from scratch. It's not playing a video, it's putting together a puzzle, and sometimes it literally forces the wrong pieces to fit.
Cognitive pioneer Elizabeth F. Loftus summarized this perfectly when she noted that memory is a dynamic, reconstructive process, not a passive recording device. Loftus, along with researchers like Laney, have done some truly landmark work showing just how easily external suggestions can corrupt our baseline data. We are continuously rebuilding our past, and for anyone trying to learn, memorize, or recall complex information, realizing that your brain is actively editing your data behind the scenes, well, that is an absolute game changer.
Okay, let's move right into part one, the mechanics of misinformation.
So how does a memory go from a relatively accurate initial impression to a completely fabricated yet highly confident false reality? Well, it starts with biological limitations and environmental pressures. When a high-stress event occurs, like a crime, witnesses naturally narrow their cognitive attention onto immediate threats, like a weapon. And this drastically degrades the visual encoding of subtle details, like a face. This degraded memory is then made much, much worse by a massive cognitive flaw known as the misinformation effect. Basically, this is a distortion that happens when you encounter misleading details after an event, which subtly overrides and fundamentally alters your original recollection.
To see this in action, just look at the famous car crash experiment. Decades of rigorous, controlled experiments prove that changing a single descriptive verb can completely rewrite a memory. If researchers ask witnesses how fast cars were going when they hit each other, they get one answer. But simply swapping the word hit for smashed significantly increases the likelihood a person will falsely remember seeing broken glass at the scene of a minor traffic accident. Think about that. A single word can successfully implant an entirely false memory. And if a single word can implant a false memory of a car crash, imagine what a poorly worded flashcard can do to your studying.
Why does this happen? As cognitive psychologist Ulrich Naser notes here, we do not record holes in our experience, we fill them in with what makes sense. When our brains encounter missing gaps in our memory, they absolutely hate the vacuum. They naturally attempt to fill those holes with plausible details. And over continuous delays, these manufactured recollections harden into certainties. Our subjective confidence actually increases over time, despite a severe lack of factual accuracy.
To stop these manufactured recollections from impeding justice, the legal system has had to adapt. A 2022 study by Quigley, McBride, and Wells highlights how modern procedures protect innocent suspects. They use what are called foils, basically innocent individuals or distractors placed within a police photo spread to ensure a witness isn't just guessing. In the academic world, you can think of foils as the highly plausible but completely wrong distractor options on a multiple-choice exam. Using structured double-blind methods with these foils ensures no accidental suggestive cues are passed on.
Building on that, a 2022 research paper by Smith, Ayala, and Ying
evaluated alternative lineup structures. They found that traditional lineups encourage witnesses to make relative judgments, basically picking the person who looks most like the culprit compared to the others. Students do this exact same dangerous guessing game on multiple choice tests, right? Comparing answers instead of relying on pure recall. Implementing a strict rule-out procedure prevents this dangerous comparative guessing, ensuring that your identifications, whether that's picking a suspect or circling an exam answer, are based on actual recall, not just a process of elimination.
Which brings us to part 2, the academic pivot. Let's look closely at the cognitive traps in studying. We've talked about courtrooms, but let's shift gears to classrooms. How do these exact same high-stakes forensic biases sabotage your academic success? If your brain is perfectly willing to invent broken glass at a car crash, what in the world is it doing to your history notes or your biology definitions when you're cramming at 2 a.m.? Enter the source monitoring error. This is a super common memory mistake where a person correctly recalls a piece of information but attributes it to the entirely wrong origin. Imagine studying for a high-stress exam. You perfectly recall a seemingly brilliant scientific fact, but because of a source monitoring failure, you mistakenly attribute it to your official textbook, when in reality, you read it on some random, unverified online forum. You remember the data, but your brain totally corrupted the source.
And this gets even more complicated when we introduce schemas. A schema is basically your brain's internal mental framework used to organize information. These schemas frequently inject default assumptions into our recollections completely without our conscious awareness. When you're reading dense course material, your brain is actively trying to fit new concepts into your pre-existing schemas. This means that your perfectly remembered fact on test day could just be a completely fabricated composite of a half-read paragraph, a related assumption, and your own creative imagination just filling in the blanks.
And the environment in which you study makes this drastically worse. When you're stressed, like, say, cramming a dense course load at 2 a.m., your brain hyper-focuses. A 2022 study by Dev and Wardell actually showed that negative emotion combined with temporal pressure selectively enhances central details, but entirely wipes out the broader context. You might remember one bolded word but completely lose how it applies to the essay question. Stress and rushing throw a massive cognitive wrench into your study habits, causing you to conflate sources and over-rely on relative judgment biases, just like a stressed eyewitness at a police lineup.
Psychiatrist Aaron T. Beck summed up this danger perfectly when he said, "The mind is a superb instrument, but it can turn against its owner and create illusions." Recognizing these pervasive memory pitfalls isn't about giving up, it's about empowerment. It allows adult learners and students to implement deliberate, evidence-based study strategies. Knowing your memory reconstructs data means you must actively safeguard against your own mental illusions. You have to double-check sources, avoid cramming to reduce temporal stress, and actually test yourself rather than just passively rereading.
I want to pause for just a quick second to thank the authors, Carol Laney and Elizabeth F. Loftus, along with the NOBA textbook Discovering Psychology 2.0 and the Diner Education Fund. Their work in making these vital, empirically proven psychological insights accessible is exactly what allows students globally to protect the integrity of their learning and truly master complex concepts.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, kind of haunting thought on our fragile mental mechanics. We've seen how memory fails in courtrooms and classrooms, but consider this. Have you ever wondered if your most cherished childhood memory, a story you recount with absolute certainty and high emotional intensity, might not actually be a real memory at all, but simply a total illusion constructed by your brain after looking at an old photograph? The mind is a puzzle, and it's up to you to make sure you're using the right pieces.